All right. Welcome to Spotlight, everyone. We are so glad that you joined us, and we also have two gentlemen joining us tonight in studio, so you can get to know them a little bit better and about what they do on Path of Life show right here on Access 21. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mr. Johnson and Dr. Evan Willis, yes, pastor of the church.
Yes, ma'am.
And that church would be Northeast Seventh-day Adventist.
Yes, ma'am.
And the program we're talking about is Path of Life.
That's correct.
All right.
Yes.
Now, Pastor Willis, I know that you, of course, are at the church. You're on the screen.
Yes.
But here's your producer here, bringing that to this platform and showing us what you do. Excuse me, what you do at the church. So I'm going to start with you, sir.
All right.
Talking about your role as a producer. Tell us a little bit more about that.
All right. So we've been doing this for a while now, and we started the idea. So, one of our favorite scriptures is Matthew 24:14, which basically says, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for witness to all nations, and then shall the end come." So we began asking ourselves, so what could we do to bring the gospel to other people?
Okay.
And that was where the idea for this program began.
Okay.
We learned about Access 21. And so what we did is basically put together a team of people in our church, an editor, camera people, and took the course here at Access 21, of course.
Yes.
You guys were great. And developed a program format, which was basically our church service that we do every Saturday morning.
Okay.
Early on, we actually also had a cooking program
nice.
that was also included in our format.
Okay.
So we've been doing that now for a while, and over the last how long has that been now? 14 years.
Yeah.
And that's 3 pastors, I guess.
Okay.
So
okay.
yeah.
Well, that's good that you talked about that, because I want to go ahead and segue to talking to the current pastor, Dr. Willis.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit more about how you kind of got into the process, knowing that this would be a program and you are the new pastor. Talk to us about your role.
So a part of the process I found is kind of thinking very important strategically, trying to be mindful of things you say. It's different being at church and then different when you know you're going to be on TV, right? So there's certain things I might say, what my friends we call it district preaching. When you're pastoring 2 small churches, there's some things you do there that you won't do when you know that there's an audience watching. And I remember early on, I had some members tell me, watch your face, pastor. Watch your eyes, pastor. People are watching us, pastor. And so I've had to learn to adjust to just that, but also trying to be authentic to who I am and who our church is.
Right. Well, that's really a good point, because yes, television is television. We have to go through the motions. I had to fix my hair, and y'all don't have to worry about that. But there are elements to being on a show that you do have to consider.
Yeah.
But I love what you said about being authentic, because people know if it's not. And with what you were saying, Mr. Johnson, about getting the gospel out to everyone and to the nations and using this type of platform to do it, people want to see authenticity.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, it's not just about standing up and just talking. You have to connect with people, and you have to begin to understand where people are. Northeast being in a community is a prime example of where you need to understand where they are, where people are, and what do they need. So we constantly have to ask ourselves, how do we adjust the delivery of our program to meet the needs of people?
Yeah.
That's a very good point, because I do know that there was a prayer march, Dr. King's celebration. Part of that was there was a prayer march in that community where your church is located. And people, whether they are in church or not, they know about, different things that are happening in the community. So with you being where you are and doing what you do, then it's good to hear that. There are people who really need that.
Yeah.
True.
Have you experienced like members of the community in relation to what I was just saying, come to you and talk to you about that?
Yeah, so I was, we're on the same path
Okay,
here.
okay.
So we've had a couple of sessions, actually 4 sessions at our church,
Okay.
with respect to race and race relations
Okay.
here in this community, where we invite people who are part of the Hidden Valley community to come and just sit down and talk about how do you see race and race relations in Charlotte.
Yes.
We're not looking for right answers or wrong answers. We simply want them to be able to express themselves
Right.
and be honest in what it is that they see and what it is that they feel. So we've done that over the past 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And then we bring them together with other communities, other white communities, predominantly white communities
That's good.
from across the city, so that they can then exchange thoughts and ideas. So that's a pretty big issue. I mean, it's
It
one,
is.
of course, that we can't come up with a solution to, but we need to at least make sure that people are having an honest dialogue, that that conversation is really the catalyst for ideas and action.
That's awesome, because that's like, one of the many things that we're dealing with, right? And so those sessions, I'm sure, are just very helpful to those in the community.
In addition to those sessions, the conversations, we've also facilitated our annual Racial Justice Summit,
Right.
which you call the Blackout.
Right.
And so we talked about issues such as housing insecurity. Our community is facing issues of gentrification. We've talked about food insecurity. That was a major thing.
Yeah.
And then we did the major push around the COVID vaccine, where there are so many things going on around there, and people have their views. But we want to make sure that we're trying to get accurate information out there,
Yes.
and not the wrong kind of information. And some things some of our presenters talked about, because I think something that was prominent in our community was the Tuskegee experiment. And so we wanted to debunk the myth of that the COVID vaccine is like the Tuskegee experiment,
Right.
because we're seeing medical doctors and other people and politicians partaking in this, not just testing it out and telling you one thing or another.
On a community, yeah.
And I think it's important too, around some of these conversations, not everything we do is going to be publicized, right?
Right.
Because certain conversations are best had behind closed doors. So
Right.
it's a mix of both and in our conversations with our community, which we host, their monthly meetings at our facility, we're able to learn insights and see things that are going on.
That is really good.
Yeah, I'll add one more piece.
Sure.
At the same time we were doing that, we also had food trucks coming in.
Oh, nice.
Because, there was a significant issue about people getting fed or not having money to get food.
Yeah.
So every weekend we had food trucks coming in, and we were actually giving away food.
That's so awesome. That's awesome, because those needs are absolutely there. And then when, dealing with COVID, there were so many things that were just really magnified. So those are some good things that came out of COVID. So we know how to reach out, reach back out.
Yeah.
So very good, very good. And I know bringing this to this platform is even more of a necessity, because those you don't reach behind closed doors,
Yes.
In person, you can reach them here.
Right.
So do either of you have a background in media?
No.
Okay. And you don't have to. And the reason I ask is because, that's the whole point. You've been able to come here and learn what you needed to learn and get to this point.
Right. So
that's good.
as they go back, so the question we ask ourselves is, so how do we expand our message? And, certainly with the internet and things like that,
Right.
people now have access to information that they did not have before. So as we started asking ourselves, what can we do? We discovered Access 21, the services that you offer, and this has just been a great experience for us over the years.
Well, that's good. And then, of course, like you said, the other platforms. I know you have a YouTube page. And what about the young people out there? Because some of these kids that have grown up, they only know the digital age. They only know social media. So what about them? How do you guys incorporate them in what you're doing?
Yeah. So I would say one of our focuses has been reaching and hearing them.
Yes.
and it's interesting. I think was unique about this generation as opposed to Robert Johnson's generation, my father's generation, and my generation. Well, I'm 34, so I shouldn't say in my generation, but I started a family very young.
Okay.
But a lot of my peers and people in this young generation, I find them in this state of because they don't have kids right away, don't get married right away, they're still figuring a lot of stuff out.
Okay. So we can call them youth too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's helping them kind of move from what it means to be a teenager to what it means to be an adult. And so that's something we've definitely focused in on. And we've tried to cater some of our planning with them around them so that they can have them in mind. But it's always it's a tightrope we walk.
I got you.
Because you also don't want to alienate your older members, your established family. So it's a tightrope that we walk. And some days we do better than others.
Well, hey, and then with this, we're talking about digital media and the social medias that are out there. We all have to do that now, right?
Yeah, right.
So maybe, that's one of the ways that tightrope can be on that tightrope.
Right.
So that's good, having that perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say that over the years, this has been a great tool, a great avenue for introducing our young people into doing something.
That's good.
In the church.
Okay, that's good.
They like working with the technology, working with cameras. One of our editors, primary editor, Alan Jackson, has been working with us for a number of years, and he was just a teenager when we first started this. So it's been a way to bring our young people into the mainstream of actually contributing to the church.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Jackson out there.
And I think a unique thing about that story is he went on to A&T and got a degree in video communication.
Wow, okay.
So, that was potentially a launching board
Yes.
into where he went for his treatment.
Exactly.
Very nice. Very nice. Well, this, we like to have situations where we have those launching boards and can get people to the next level.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much, the name of your show, Path of Life, where you're taking people through different things. And so let's talk about that as well. We have been on a course where we have to just continue life after coming out of COVID. And we still kind of dealing with some things. Yeah. We still being careful and mindful. But during that time, what can you share that you as a church, you as family, and all of us learned during that time?
One of the things we learned was that people just want to connect with each other somehow. And, while we were still doing the Path of Life ministry program, we also did a Zoom version of our church service and our other services. And people didn't just want to just hear a person talking. We learned after a few months that, one of the highlights of that was just when you finish talking, give people a chance to just say hello to each other. They hadn't seen each other in months. And just on camera, they just wanted to just wave and just say hi. And that helped us to maintain the togetherness of that group.
Yeah.
And I would say that what also emerges, what's really important, right?
Yes.
For a lot of people. And so I think one thing that was unique that I think our people miss at our church, as Robert alluded to, is the sense of family. I mean, what I marvel at about this church, because I'm coming in midstream. I'm not the originator of the church. I'm coming in midstream. What I marvel at this church is how people have done life together. People have raised their kids together. They've gone through births together. They've gone through graduations together. They've seen these kids go from yay tall to driving cars, getting college degrees.
Yes.
And so one thing we had to do was be creative. As Robert alluded to, he and his wife had a great idea, which was allowing people to talk after our church services. After church, usually you talk, you hang out for a little bit. So it's set up on Zoom where you had these different groups where you could catch up, you could talk to people. And so those are things we try to do as we try to maintain family because, you know, our slogan is Northeast Seventh-day Adventist Church, where we prioritize family, community, and fellowship. And where we believe that family is more than just blood.
Yeah.
And so to do that, we've had to find these creative ways. They had a great graduation program. We have a graduation thing every year. And they found a way to do it digitally and in person. We did drive-up church. Great space people connect outside.
Yeah.
And so I think it allowed us to rediscover what's truly important about church and truly important about our community.
Yeah. So not just about the program itself, but how do you then use the program to help people remain connected with each other? That's really the important piece.
Yeah, it is important. I think everybody can learn that, no matter where you are in life, you know, your age range, your ethnicity. We talked a little bit about the race. We can unpack that a whole lot with what we need to do with race relations and becoming a family as well. But just talking about staying connected is so important. And I really enjoyed during the drive by like birthday parties and, you know, that was fun. It was like, you could tell, we humans, we're a little more creative than we realize, right? So that's good to hear that you did that.
So I've got to say, one of the challenges that I think we and other groups have is that we've discovered kind of a uniqueness in that whole COVID experience, you know, the drive-by thing and all of that. I mean, it wasn't like reaching out and touching somebody, but it was good.
Right.
The question I often ask groups is, so what have you learned from that you want to now retain and take into going back to what you're calling normal? You know, and realizing that normal as we knew it probably doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
You know, so what's that new normal look like, and getting people to think about that new experience?
Yes, that's perfect, because that's one of my questions, to talk about how have you all and how can we all implement those things that we learned into what we're doing now going forward. Because I really feel like there's more things that are coming. There are things that are coming that we need to really wake up about and not think, we need to go back to normal.
Right.
Okay? Because like you said, we realize that normal may not have been what we thought. And then of course going forward, you know, there's things that we need to apply to going forward.
Right.
So I don't know if there's some strategic things that you have thought about that have come to you, that have been downloaded to you. And if there are, if you can share, because people need to hear it.
So I would say COVID, you know, while COVID was definitely a negative experience, I think it produced a lot of positive things. And I think one of the things that we truly learned is that no matter what, God still sits on the throne. And he's going to call his people. I mean, we were surprised to still be able to baptize during COVID. I think we had 18 baptisms.
Right.
People got serious.
Yeah, during the heart of COVID. And beyond that, we had to reevaluate maybe some things we did mindlessly. And when I say mindless, I don't mean it in a harmful way, but there's certain things that if you go to a certain place enough times, what at first seems odd becomes a part of the backdrop of your mind. So there's a green spot on the carpet. That green spot at first it bothers you, but then it just becomes, well, there's just a green spot there.
Right.
And so as we are revamping our prayer meeting service, you know, people still watch online. In person has kind of dwindled. And so we had to ask, what's essential about in person? And then we began to ask our people, what is it that you really need to hear? And one thing that's really emerged that people are really dealing with, I think COVID really brought that to the forefront, was mental health.
Mental health, yeah.
So we know that in our prayer meeting services, we want to deal with and talk about mental health from a scientific, but also a spiritual, biblical perspective.
Right.
One thing our people talk about, and a lot of young people, financial management, right? Financial education. And I think there's a correlation between financial education and giving and stewardship in your church.
Sure.
And then our people want to talk about things that are pressing to their lives. And so we've talked about that. And one of the things we're working towards is developing a live podcast for prayer meeting.
Okay.
So there'll be things that we're talking about where people can interact with what's going on the platform, but it still be posted on our YouTube channel, potentially posted on Spotify, Apple Music, and those things like that.
Yeah.
That will allow us to, one, reach the people right there, but also continue to spread to the masses as the original mission and vision was.
Yeah.
Right.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So, one of the things that I think all organizations are realizing that COVID did was ask them to be creative. And in being creative, you've actually given your audience more and different kinds of choices. Okay. So, I mean, for church, the paradigm was, hey, we get up, we get dressed, we go to church on that day.
Right.
But of course, now with COVID, we've had to find other ways of getting that message out there.
Yeah.
And, so all organizations have experienced this, so restaurants have experienced it. The old paradigm was, hey, you get dressed, you go, you sit down and eat someplace.
Right.
But of course, with COVID, now they have introduced other ways of getting food to you, whether it's DoorDash or something else, or you drive there and they bring it to your car. So COVID has allowed us to see that there are other choices.
Yes.
And the question is, so now that people realize they have choices, why would they choose you?
Yeah.
Okay. So we continue to be asking ourselves that question. How do we put it together? How do we go with the both and solutions so that it makes it easy for people to choose you, to see you, to be a part of your ministry, either on the air or coming there or something else.
Right. Well, and it all goes down to the fact that we had to think outside the box. God's not in the box.
No.
And so there's so many things that I know we still need to discover and do. But you guys mentioned some food. You talked about food, DoorDash and all this, but you also said that you all had a cooking show. And I know that y'all had some good vegetarian dishes and some flavorful. So tell me about that show. I want to hear more about that because I don't think I've seen that. That one. That was a while back.
It was a while back, and maybe that's one of those things we need to resurrect and bring back again.
That's right.
It was a popular show. The host of the show was Rachel Hamden.
Okay.
And Rachel has a great camera presence, and all of her meals were vegetarian meals. It was a very popular show, especially during Christmas and Thanksgiving time. We'd come together twice a month on a Sunday and set up our cameras, and she would prepare her meals. She had her team of people, and we took most of the day and filmed those various cooking segments and presented it as a part of our regular broadcast.
Yeah.
It was very popular. We may need to talk with Rachel about bringing that program back again.
That's right. And when Miss Rachel does, tell her to bring some plates because the staff is going to be here ready to eat something too.
Yes, that was a great fallout from the cooking show because now that you've cooked all this stuff, what are you going to do with this food?
Right.
So the staff was very pleased to be there working because then they got to eat and then work.
Oh, yes, exactly. And I was just talking to a young lady in one of the stores yesterday about a vegan gentleman that I follow on Instagram.
Okay.
And he comes up with some of the most wonderful dishes. Oh my goodness. And I'm trying them out. So that's one thing that we'll have. We have someone here, Tia Capers, who does vegan eating, and cooking. So she has that platform. And then, I do eat fish, pescatarian, so it's like, you have that and different ways that people can prepare that. But, I think we're also coming into a point where we need to really think about that.
Right.
Growing your food. You mentioned food deserts.
Yes,
and people need to learn more about how to do that, thinking outside the box again.
Yeah. So that's a great idea. So this was what, 2009 when we first started broadcasting, I think, and maybe we were just ahead of our time.
Yeah.
With the vegetarian and the vegan food preparation.
Yeah.
Now, of course, you've got all these restaurants and places around. It's much more popular than it was then. So then maybe now we should bring that segment back again.
Absolutely. I'm really feeling that because, not just because I want to eat, but because but because of the fact that, food brings people together.
Right.
And talking about just the necessity of first eating and then eating good food and then eating and understanding what that means to nourish the body, and nourishing the soul. And there's a lot to that for show.
Absolutely.
So, we look forward to that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but right now, can you give us maybe some plans, share some plans for this show, Path of Life? Is there anything that you may be adding to it or continuing to bring things to the table for that show?
Pastor has been great at making sure that our presence is relevant. So we have a number of community discussions that I don't think we've brought to Path of Life, but we've had them in the church, where we've had community leaders talking about various issues that are of interest to the community.
Yes.
So we're doing that already, but I think we should begin to introduce that as part of our Path of Life program as well.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
And then we have our annual, so Black History Month, we first Sabbath, or the first Saturday, and I think it will broadcast on the Thursday following, we have our Caribbean Day.
Oh, okay.
Then the next week we're talking about Black Love.
Okay.
The week after that we're talking about African Day.
Okay.
And then the final Saturday or Sabbath in February, it's going to be African American Heritage, and we have Linda Ammons coming from Las Vegas to talk. And that evening we have our annual program, Praise and Protest.
Yeah.
Celebration of Black Preaching.
Well, you have a lot going on, and as we are wrapping up, why don't you, both of you, tell the audience where they can see you on this platform and even on YouTube?
Well, so we are broadcasting each week a 1-hour show Thursday night at 8 p.m. So if you tune into Access 21 at 8 p.m., you will get a chance to see our program. We're located at 827 Tom Hunter Road, so we invite you there so that you can sit there and share our warm bodies and the presence as well.
Yeah. All right. Thank you both so much for being with us, and look forward to seeing all of that in that new show. Okay. All right, guys.
Thanks so much for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And you guys, thank you also for joining us for this episode of The Spotlight. And we expect you to come back the next time. So tune in and we'll see you there.